Welcome to Sew Very Easy. My name is Laura, and ties are a lot of fun for people to wear. They're not just for men, but one thing that does often happen when we are wearing ties is a lot of times our dinner ends up on the tie. So if that's the case, we might as well take those ties and turn them into a tablecloth. So for the tie tablecloth or quilt, we're going to need some old ties. Now I would recommend starting with no less than 16 ties. And we're going to need to take them apart and press them. For the tablecloth, we will be using 16 of the large ends and 16 of the small ends. Now because ties are made out of polyester, silk, and wool, we're going to need to stabilize them. So after we have them all pressed, we're going to need to get a good stabilizer. And I'm going to stabilize them with an interfacing that is designed for t-shirts. This is a washable interfacing. It has glue on one side. It is a woven fabric made out of cotton. So it's a nice strong fabric, and yet it's very lightweight. The interfacing is from Basel, and it's 60 inches by 72 inches, so it's a big piece to work with. And you can get this at a lot of craft and hobbies and quilt stores. So we have the ties ready, we have our interfacing. Now we're going to need a template. The template consists of 3 pieces of paper, and we're going to be able to tape them together along those guidelines. And when those pages are taped together, the measurement from the top of that point to the bottom is 23.5 inches. And when you do print this out, I would recommend that you print it out on a computer, not through a tablet or a phone. It prints out better that way, and you do need to print it out at 100%. So this is the shape of that large template. We have the point, and those little corners are 1/4 inch seam allowances. I do want to cut these tie shapes out of that lengthwise of the fabric. The length of the fabric is the strongest. It's the part that stretches the least. And because the ties are already on the bias, I do want to keep these so that they're not on the bias. So I have 2 layers, and I'm going to be able to take this shape and trace it and rotate it as I'm tracing it. What I'm wanting is to get a total of 16 of these large shapes. I have been able to get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and I can get a 15th one on that fold. I'm going to take the 16th one and put it on this fold, and then cut out that small tie and do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to cut out all of these interfacing shapes. So from that interfacing, I'm able to get 16 pieces cut out in that large format and 16 pieces cut out in the smaller tie. I now am going to be able to take that interfacing and fuse it to the back side of the ties. The fuse side is that side that feels a little rough. So I'm going to be able to take that and fuse it onto the small, and take a big one and fuse it on to the back of that larger piece. Now we do have room that we can rearrange this. So if we do have a stain, we can take that out. Or you can leave it just for something to laugh about. But we need to fuse 16 of these pieces on the small and the large. Then we're going to be able to cut them out, and we're going to be able to use a rotary cutter and a ruler to do that. So let's get 16 large and 16 small tie pieces cut out and ready to go. And with that interfacing, you can see where that silk has been turned into something we're going to be able to work with without it stretching. So we're going to put this quilt together in quarters. For each quarter, we're going to need 4 large units and 4 small units. And we're simply going to sew them together. So we have a large, a small, a large, a small, large, small, large, and small. We are going to be able to match up those little points that were on that template. So that is a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So the small tie and the large tie are going to match, and we're going to be able to stitch all the way down. I now have my 4 quarters sewn together, and when I did sew them, I did not press the seams, though I did keep the seams free as I could along the bottom. Now I'm going to be able to join those up, and I will have only 2 sections that I'll sew down the center. I now have one last seam to do, and it's to sew these big halves together. I have not pressed this yet because I'm going to press it all later. So match up those seams, and I'm going to stitch on one side and then stitch on the other. Now that I have this all together, I'm going to be able to turn it, and from the back, press all of the seams going in the same direction. And when it's all pressed, we have a 45-inch circle. And you can see how nice and flat this is. We do have a little bit of a hole in the center. So we're going to be able to take that and once again put that really nice interfacing onto just a little scrap of tie and cover that up with a circle. That fusible interfacing that was used for t-shirts definitely gives this a nice finish. And you can see how well it is going to hold up as we use it. And by pressing all of those seams going in the same direction, the center stays flat. So we can see all of those seams going in one direction, and that is all nice and flat. Having all of those ties stabilized makes it easy to sew, and it's going to give it a lot of years' wear. Once this little center has been put on, we're going to be able to sandwich this together and quilt it. And we're going to be able to quilt this just like we do any quilt. This is going to be a lot of fun on any table. And if you spill something on my tie, well, I guess it's going to be okay. And thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe. And would you make a tie quilt? And would you eat on a tie quilt? Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.